Just stating what should be obvious by now. The only way we're ever going to sort out COVID-19 in the US is with a mass social movement that directly combats the class that's profiting so heavily from dragging this thing out forever. Public health authorities have given up all pretext of caring about public health. All levels of government are outright encouraging people to get infected. Media downplay the disaster until the consequences are impossible to ignore, and resume downplaying it immediately after. The propaganda at this point is downright insulting. Just change the color of the COVID maps, even though there's been no such change in community levels, transmission, or deaths. They don't even bother to lie with sophistication. Meanwhile, people are dying. In the US, even by official underestimates, we averaged over 60,000 dead a month in the first 2 months of this year, before new metrics aimed at reducing official counts were implemented. These deaths are needless. We know how to prevent them. We've known how to prevent them for the better part of 2 years now, but prevention isn't profitable. Dragging the pandemic out indefinitely while people are needlessly killed and debilitated, on the other hand, turns out to be a fucking goldmine. It's time we spoke plainly. The fight against this pandemic, and the next one, is a fight against the bosses and their state, and it needs to be treated as such. I don't claim to have all the answers on how to go about that, though it does seem like strikes, school walkouts, and lots of mutual aid would probably be pretty indispensable in any effort, as well as good public information to counter the fact that there's basically no reliable official information in this country. All I'm saying, though, is that it's past time that those of us who claim to be revolutionaries, and I include myself in that, figured out how to get this thing going. We need to make pandemic resistance a focus of our organizing and propaganda efforts wherever we are. And the thing is, it ties in with literally any issue that we might be working on. You're working on police abolition? Well, I'm sure you've heard, this isn't news, that the cops fucking, no matter what anyone does with standing orders or policies or anything, the motherfuckers refuse to get vaccinated, refuse to get masked. They're going around spreading the shit and just shitting all over public safety. If you're talking about anti-racism, well, I mean, this is a fucking racist pandemic. The whole management of it is racist. And it turns out when you tell white people correctly that it's people of color who are the most likely to suffer the worst consequences, that reduces their willingness to consider any kind of public health precautions. Talking about immigration and abolishing ICE, well, ICE is fucking deporting people who are actively infectious to other countries, which is not only horrible for those people, but also sabotages other countries' fucking pandemic prevention efforts. It ties in with literally everything, because literally everything we're dealing with deals with human beings, and this is shit that affects human beings. It ties in with everything. We need to create a climate where we can shut down the main sites of transmission, which, by all indications, are schools and workplaces, with or without the approval of the bosses in the state. Only if we achieve this do we have any chance of putting an end to a pandemic that could have been over by early 2021 if the people in charge of the response had given half a fuck about us. We also need to be very clear that what happens with COVID here in the US has a direct effect on the situation in the rest of the world, even in the countries that have actually done a decent job controlling the plague. When a country as big as the US offers itself up as a safe space for new variants to develop and propagate undetected, those variants will necessarily harm public health efforts elsewhere, and they have. When a country with uncontrolled COVID transmission insists on deporting people who are actively infectious, not only commits a crime against the individuals, but also sabotages the public health efforts of the countries to which they're being deported. There's no individualism in this. There's no individual solution, either as individual countries or as individual people. And we need to be making that clear to everyone, since there's this whole propaganda effort to treat this as some sort of individualistic thing. Because protecting yourself from infection is literally protecting others from infection, because it means if you don't get it, other people can't get it from you. It's all fucking connected because it's literally in the air we breathe. Letting the pandemic run rampant here in the US kills people in other countries. Fighting it here will save lives in other countries. A social movement to impose the COVID precautions we needed from the start is not just an act of self-preservation, but of international solidarity. And I say, let's get stuck in. Let's just fucking do it. Let's at the very least start working on what we ought to be doing.